Hi, it's Jasmine. You know, that girl who did you know what way before the internet ever existed. Join me and my special guest every week as we talk about anything and everything because nothing is too taboo. So punch your ticket and get on board the crazy train with me, Jasmine St. Clair. All aboard! Welcome to a new episode of Crazy Train with me, Jasmine St. Clair. I hope you guys are enjoying the ride so far. This week's guest is the most fabulous master of ceremonies, Larry Legend. Some of you know him from wrestling, some of you know him from theater, but to me, he's just fabulous. I think he's made the most impact of any ring announcer we've had on Xpw so far. So here we go. Thank you so much for joining us today. I love your hat. Your hat is just so memorable. You have style. You really do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's not about having Gucci from head to toe. It's just one little minute accoutrement, if you will, whether it be, the Captain Larry Legend hat or the Apple Watch, the Unity Apple Watch, just one little thing. And someone that was very stylish taught me that once when I was giving them a ride in Lyft. They said, guys who are like, Prada from head to toe, Balenciaga from head to toe, they look foolish. They're not at a fashion show. They're not walking the runway. So why would you do that? It's gaudy and bourgeoisie. So just one signature kind of, oh, look at that is what makes me legendary.
Well, does cologne count as well, or is it just accessories?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that's why I use scented oils. You usually can find them on the street or in the bodega in New York City, or even down here in Baltimore where I'm from. The scented oils, they're imitation, but they always give you a nice hue, a nice glow. And women and men want to be around you just for the way that you smell.
Yeah, I get that sometimes a lot. So I don't necessarily want to be around the men that want to be around me from the sense that I have. So I change up the perfume now and again, and I go back to like Avon, to the cheapest thing possible, the teen cologne, the Sweet and Honesty or something like that. I used to sell those oils years ago.
Yeah. Well, I always pick them up. I just picked up a new one last night. I think it was Gucci number 2 or something. It's clearly an imitation, but I like the way it smells. It's very masculine and feminine all at once. And I like that. I like that kind of aroma of like the flowers and the musk.
Yeah, I like musk. Musk is manly. Now, we have to talk about your origins because you're very different from a lot of the ring announcers or master of ceremonies that we get. I did look you up. I don't like looking people up too much because not everything is true. But did you study drama and Brazilian studies? Like, why on earth would you take Brazilian studies?
Well, I had to pick courses. When you enroll undergrad at universities, you've got your prime focus. Mine was drama. I was working towards a bachelor's in the fine arts, but I also had these elective courses that were in the humanities or the sciences that were requirements. So I remember I picked criminology as one of my courses that I sat in for lectures just to understand why the laws in the United States were the way they were and sort of redlining and all types of things like that. I took the criminology course, and I also took a public it was American cultures and public values course that talked about kind of why society norms became the way that they did. And in a lot of ways, people don't realize this, but a lot of America was shaped and molded by Europeans and sort of trying to live up to kind of like a higher sense of art, a higher sense of morals, a higher sense of culture. And a lot of that came from Europe. So I really benefited from that class. And then I took a Brazilian cultures class. Why? Just the description of, what the class entailed, talking about, culture, films, music and sort of the influence of Brazil and other parts of South America on the entire globe, I just felt like, hey, why not take this class? And it was one of the most beneficial classes I attended or took while I was at NYU. And I still call on a lot of those, lessons and just discussions that we had in that class.
It's unusual for anyone in wrestling to know anything about Brazilian. My mother is Brazilian, so when I saw that, I was excited because I've done carnival before, and it's this whole other cultural thing people don't know about. Like, people spend 6 months out of the year getting ready for carnival. Those people have normal jobs during the day, like at McDonald's, Starbucks, they're teachers, and then they just go and they do carnival. That's like the big night. It's almost 24 hours too, like the whole thing. It's from start to finish, like a 12-hour day. It's
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah, well, who doesn't like a good party? And there's no party that I mean, maybe Mardi Gras, but not even really, but that's Carnival. And also there's a Trinidadian
Yeah.
Carnival as well, that while I actually worked at Starbucks before I was a master of ceremonies, a coworker of mine was telling me about how excited she was to go to Trinidad for Carnival. And, she came back and she showed me all these pictures of someone that I didn't even recognize. I saw this meek, young, dark-skinned girl, Waydana was her name. And she came back and I just saw all of her glory and all of the makeup. And I marveled at the transformation that she underwent just for this festival. And it's something that I would love to take a part of one day. I mean, I've already got the captain's hat, so I'm ready to lead a ship.
I
Who knows?
think you'd be good. You'd be good. Like the Brazilian carnival, not everyone knows samba. I was on the big float, and the guy that was sort of I guess he was on the front of the boat. He had this like an East Indian guru outfit on, not like a cult leader, but really cool outfit. And it's remarkable. You have to do it. Like, you've got to do it at least once in this lifetime. And the parties are insane after.
Oh, I've heard. Also, when I was a kid, there was a kids show on. Well, I can't say I was a kid. I was probably around 13, right when I was getting out of sort of like cartoons and Power Ranger, kind of fandom, getting more into wrestling. But there was a show that was broadcast here in the US called Susha and Friends. And I remember that there was this model, she was a blonde model and she was very voluptuous. And she like hosted this kid shows with these huge, costumed monsters and kids jumping around and competing in games. And I thought to myself, wow, this is Brazilian culture. Well, this seems way far more sexualized than anything that I've ever experienced in American culture. So I think that maybe also led me to take that Brazilian cultures class to learn a little bit more about that culture.
Yeah, that's one of many things they do. When I worked on soap operas there, and the later the show was on TV, then the less clothes people wore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine like your parents having this conversation with you. Hey, so and so saw you. Oh no, that wasn't me. That's just a doppelganger. I have no clue who that is. It's like,
Right.
I don't know anything. So drama, of course, I knew you were involved in drama somehow, because when you go into the ring, like people who have not seen Larry the Legend live, when he goes into the ring, it's just really like Bob Ortiz was great. And he was always dressed to the nines, but and charismatic. But Larry Legend is in that category, but it's this other thing, like I don't know, there's something else about you that's charismatic. Why did you even get into wrestling, or did it find you?
Well, I guess I have a really strong Catholic school upbringing. And I remember whenever we would go to mass in Catholic school, the priest would kind of like, gather us all around to deliver the sermon. And he didn't always deliver it from the pulpit. He would sometimes walk amongst us and get close to us and make real good eye contact with ones of us. And I was really captivated, not necessarily by the stories, but just by the presence the priests in the Catholic Church in particular. And my grandmother used to always say when I was really, really just an infant, toddler, oh, you're going to grow up to be a preacher. You know, she would always say, you're going to grow up to be a preacher. And I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know what that meant. But what I've learned over my journey in pro wrestling is that the ring is very much a sacred kind of hallowed ground. It's why a lot of the times you see people wipe their feet before they get into the ring, because if you respect the ring, then the ring will respect you back. And a lot of that kind of heightened, reverence for this ritual that we participate in, and we're members of in a ring, it overtakes me. It overtakes me that I am like that priest, that I am what my grandmother foretold that I was going to be one day, and that's a preacher. And even though I'm not, giving a sermon from the Bible, the same type of qualities that the priest captivated me and had me watching and kind of like really into mass. I wasn't really into mass. I was more into getting out of class, but I really would listen to Father Bob and Father Mike and all of them, tell these, allegories and stories. And that's really what wrestling is. It's just a lot more of the I don't want to call it dance, but a lot more of the combat part of it. But you need a good narrator, you need a good priest, a good preacher, and that's why I approach it with the reverence that I do. And I think the fans feel it. They feel it off of me when I get in there and I'm looking at them and I'm just it's absorbing it and letting them know I'm having a good time. Now it's time for you to have a good time.
You do have that. You do bring that to the table. And I've never seen any of our ring announcers ever do that for XPW. And you mentioned a very important thing, eye contact. In wrestling, you use it to convey whatever messages you have to the other person, whether you're throwing them over a rope or something or barbed wire. And it's just the same thing in improv. You've just got to keep the eye contact going so you know what your scene partner is doing. Did you take improv before?
Well, yeah, improv is definitely something that I would say. I've taken acting classes and been involved in community theater for years. Like my grandmother passed away. Wow, I didn't even realize we were going to go here. But my grandmother passed away when I was around 12, and I was just grief-stricken and directionless. And my mom got me involved in community theater, the oldest African-American community theater in all of the country is right here in Baltimore, and they have a youth theater program. Yeah, they have a youth theater program. They're called the Arena Players. And my mom, knew that I was going to be missing my grandma, who in a lot of ways was kind of like my mom. My mom was working a lot, and my grandma was the one to get me up for school, to receive me from school. So when she passed away, my mom enrolled me in the Arena Players Youth Theater program. And that's where I really started to get into the whole, like, oh, we can kind of play. And also we can work towards like putting on a production, and a lot of the training for acting is just doing those improvisations and learning how it feels to react to something and be sad, how it feels in your body when you're happy and you react, and how to convey that honestly when you're like reading or memorizing lines and doing a scene from a play. So yeah, I just fell in love with it, and somewhere along the line, I started to notice that a lot of the qualities in pro wrestling that I really, really, really was attracted to were a lot of the same qualities that actors, kind of the best actors did. The best actors acted honestly, and the best wrestlers performed honestly. And that's a craft. That's a craft, and not everyone can master it. So somewhere along the line, I was like, I really love this acting thing. I'm really into Shakespeare and all other musical theater and all of that stuff. But the acting in wrestling, when done right, there's nothing that can touch it. There's nothing that can touch the group kind of church-like, gathering, and the feeling that permeates everyone when the wrestlers are doing it right. So I just kind of spun my love of acting into a targeted type of performance. because I don't want to say they're actors, because I know that's kind of, depending on who you're talking to, someone old school, they don't like that. But the type of performance that comes from wrestling, I just kind of snowballed into it.
It's interesting because, okay, so first and foremost, when I started taking improv at UCB, I learned all about Del Close. Now, Del Close, for those of you who are listening, is he's the godfather of improv. Then this is where we based our foundation. So he was in contact with a cult years ago, and while he was alive. Then when I went to Second City, I went through the conservatory, and I'm like, this is a cult, because you're doing these games. They do those in cults. They do games. They do like-minded things. So I'd say wrestling is like a cult. You're in the biggest cult right now in XPW, which is like later. We'll get to that, but it's a whole other thing, But yeah, wrestling, I would say it's acting. But don't you find some wrestlers when they do their promos, sometimes they tend to overact? Okay, when you do your promo, you have to be way at the top. Got it. But when they bring that into a regular acting job, do you find that it's easy for most wrestlers to perhaps overact if they're going out to read for something because of their characters and all that?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's all acting, but there's all types of audiences and all types of styles that are catered to the audience. So I would say that pro wrestling acting is very similar to children's theater and horror movie acting, where it's kind of like any adult observing it is going to be in on the fact that, okay, this guy, is doing this to elicit the laugh from the children, or the delight from the kids. We get what he's doing, and he's doing it so well because look at how it's working. Or for horror movie, it's kind of like tongue in cheek, like, well, why would they run up the stairs when that's where they heard so, you can do that honestly, just as much as you can like read your Shakespeare honestly, and really have the type of audience that would want to go see Richard III captivated by the style of acting. So I do find that a lot of wrestlers, when you do see them flex their acting chops, well, mostly I see most of them rely on the character that we know them from as wrestling. I don't think I've ever seen Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's done quite a few films. I don't think I've ever seen him be anyone other than Stone Cold that we all used to love from pro wrestling. But in the roles that he's been in, with all due respect. But a lot of the times I find that pro wrestlers bring that very presentational, larger than life acting style, but that's not always the project. And that is one of the reasons that's, you get The Miz in the Marine, or Randy Orton in, whatever. So yeah, I think that they do overact a little bit, but I think it's a stylized acting, and I don't think that I diminish it anymore. It's just that you've got to know your audience and how to when to perform that style and who it's best targeted for.
You're very intelligent. I mean, I knew you were smart, but this is very it's very eye-opening. It really is. You learn something new from other actors as well as you go on in life. How did you get into wrestling, especially CZW of all places? Like, did you even train to wrestle at all, or did you just going to hang out?
So I was undergrad at NYU. I completed my second year, and then I didn't have enough money to go back. I was already very far in debt. My mom and family were trying to help me as much as they could get through it. But after my second year, I kind of resolved that, hey, if I'm at an audition, and Denzel Washington is who I'm up against, it doesn't matter that I went to NYU and the Stella Adler Conservatory of Acting, because they're probably going to go with, Denzel. And I said, you know what, let me just take a step back from New York City and the whole college life. And I dropped out. I dropped out after my second year. But I wanted to do something that was like involved in performance. I wanted to not get rusty or not have that thing inside of me that had been filled for 2 years of performing with great actors who have gone on to do really good things. Actually, a lot of them that I was in class with. I needed to do something, and I'll never forget one night I was watching Raw after having dropped out of NYU and being really depressed that I wasn't back in New York continuing my studies. I was watching Raw and an advertisement ran during Raw. And there was a voice that was saying, have you ever wanted to step out of the crowd and get into the ring? MCW Bone Breakers Pro Wrestling Training Academy will teach you how to be some of the stars of the future. And they started going down the different people who had come through the Bone Breakers Pro Wrestling Training Academy in Maryland, where I'm from. When I dropped out of NYU, I moved back to Maryland, Baltimore. And it was, Lita, Orlando Jordan, Joey Mercury, different names like that. And I was like, wow, not only is this a reputable sounding place, but they're running an ad during Raw. And we're talking like, 2001, 2001 Raw. Like, this is a lot of people are watching wrestling right now, and somehow there's a local ad running for a pro wrestling school. How? How is this even going on? How does this work? Do these guys work with WWE? Like, did WWE give them the thumbs up? Like, yeah, you could run that ad. I just had to find out how. And I called the number and I spoke to the owners, to Mark the Shark Schrader and Corporal Punishment, Dan McDevitt. They said to me that if I was serious, come on down. They'll give me a tour of the place and maybe we can talk about how I could be a part of it. Because really what I wanted to know was how you guys got that ad on TV. I lied to you not. I was like, wait a minute. I'm seeing ads for like, Sony, movies, all types of big budget things. And in the middle of that, there's a little ad for a pro wrestling training academy in Maryland. And coincidentally, that ad was voiced, I found out, by Axel Rotten. The late Axel Rotten was the one who was doing the voiceover for that ad, just to throw his name out there because I eventually got on to meet him. But MCW, Maryland Championship Wrestling, is what introduced me to the world of pro wrestling. And I really started as kind of like a gopher, just go running and getting tobacco for Romeo Valentino or getting something for Adam Flash or, sweeping up the school, getting coffee and pizza, just things like that. And I would also help with the merch at the shows. I was kind of the designated, let's count all these shirts, make sure that none are walking out of the school when, Dan or Mark are not around, sell the waters, get all that. So I was given an education into how this company was able to run an ad on Raw. And it was through the school. That's where they generated their revenue, and they used the students' tuition to kind of float these shows. And, the graduation was really, eventually, the kids who paid their tuition would get on the show. So I really kind of got broken in through MCW, but it wasn't until I met Ruckus, the Jake the Snake of Getting Baked, my mentor, my personal mentor, Ruckus, that I found out that there were other indies. I knew of MCW, that was my home fed, but of course, I was pretty naive about how things worked. So I was learning as I went along, but Ruckus is the one who put me on to CZW and the Ring of Honors and this whole sort of community of other, independent wrestling organizations that had come after ECW, because that's the time that we're talking. We're talking 2001, 2002, 2003 is what was really when we're talking that I got introduced into pro wrestling and got involved. And Ruckus, I announced him one time in Maryland, and he was like, man, I got to take you with me to CZW. And I was like, great. But I was thinking in the back of my mind, what the hell is CZW?
Surprise.
But I had no clue. I was just like, okay, yeah, this guy, Ruckus is awesome, by the way. So this was my first time seeing him wrestle. I had seen him on the Backyard Wrestling game. I'd seen images of him, but this is my first time meeting him and seeing him wrestle. And I was like, wow, this guy's like a mega superstar on this level, and he wants to take me somewhere. So we sort of went back and forth through, I don't even remember. Wow, I don't remember if we were calling or texting or whatever. And he just kept trying to say, just come down. Don't worry about it. Just come down, bring your suit, and I'm gonna introduce you to John. Had no clue who John was. Just listening to Ruckus, he's like, I'm gonna introduce you to John. And when he sees you, I guarantee you he's gonna love you. Don't worry about it. This is what Ruckus keeps telling me. And I'm like, okay, man, whatever. And finally one show, I think the show was Last Team Standing. And this was the Human Tornadoes debut for CZW as well. It would turn out. I didn't know this at the time, but when I got there and finally Ruckus arrived, he arrived with Human Tornado. And Human Tornado was in town from the West Coast, and I met him, and we both were kind of like, yeah, man, we're here to do our thing. Like, I don't know what we're really going to do, but we're here to do our thing. And I'm like, well, I'm with Ruckus, so I think I'm going to, be announcing him. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm in the tag team thing. And we both killed it. Our first times in CZW, we both killed it. But that is really how I got introduced. And I started out in CZW as the personal ring announcer for Blackout, for Ruckus' stable featuring Joker and Eddie Kingston, Chrissy Rivera, Robbie Marino, and Sabian. Now, the Black G's. We were a group, a stable that was all about smoking weed and hip hop culture, and Ruckus brought me in kind of as a nod to Gertner, kind of a nod to him, like, this is my group. This is the guy who announces us because he's way better than your announcer here at CZW, and he's the one that can do it right. So that's how I got in there, and yeah, and Ruckus had a very particular intro that was a whole bunch of like rhymes about pot and smoking it, and it ended with, and the Bruce Lee of woo-wee! And usually he said to me, announcers can't nail it, but he was like, you nail it every time, and that's why I got to bring you there with me, because I don't want anyone else to announce me but you.
Why the hell didn't he bring you to 3PW then? Like, what was he stashing you in a fucking, like, why didn't he bring you to us? That pisses me off. I have to have a talk with him about this one day.
Well, I'll tell you this much, Jasmine. The first 3 times that I went, there was no pay window. There was no pay window at the end of the night. Okay, so
okay.
I definitely trusted Ruckus. I definitely felt safe around him. But the logistics of like, hey, be here, do this,
Right.
Thanks. There was a little bit of something that needed to kind of be ironed out, and not to sort of shade him at all, but that was never discussed with Ruckus and I at the very beginning when I was the personal ring announcer. So, I kind of was like, when I'm available, I'd love to help out. That was my real origin with CZW, is when I'm available, I'd love to help out. I believe I did it 3 times as just the personal ring announcer for them. And then I was like, I can't afford this. I can't afford to be making this trip. And, hindsight being 2020, Maven Bentley said, well, why didn't you just say anything? And I'm like, Maven, back then CZW was scary as shit. I didn't want to say anything to anyone. I was just happy to be there. There were huge crowds. It was so violent and bloody, and I kind of was just like, okay, I got out of here alive, So I never wanted to bring that up to anyone, and I never brought it up to Ruckus. But the first 3 times I was just in CZW with him, and then I left for a while, and then CZW's announcer quit. He went to take a job for WWE in the magazine, and Zandig remembered me and was like, hey, why don't we get that guy who was with Claude? I liked him. I liked the way he did it, so that's how I got processed into being the full-time CZW announcer, was kind of making a couple appearances here and there with Ruckus, which I've learned was really kind of like your tryout, does he show up? How does he look? How does he sound? Is he like, I learned. I didn't know at the time. I was very naive, but I learned that's kind of like how you get processed into anything. Like, is he going to work out? And I did. And then I became the CZW guy.
That's so crazy. I can't believe you just said it was scary. Those are a bunch of little boys with glass tubes and tables and blood and blades. You could eat them up for lunch and spit them out and have them for dinner, please.
Necro was scary to me.
You were scared of Necro?
At the time? I mean, I didn't, I know, decorum, introduce yourself to everyone. Hello, I'm, this person. But I was really kind of with Ruckus. And as Ruckus like went around to everyone, he was like, my man Larry, and like he was introducing me to everyone. But some of the guys were like a little kind of like, Ooh, got brain damage. Okay. And again, another one that I got to know and found out was a huge softie. Rest in peace to Marvin Lambert. Brain damage is no longer with us, but he was a very intimidating, imposing looking individual when I first got to CZW. And I didn't know any of these people. Only one I knew was Ruckus and the referee, D. Edwards, who was Derek Moore from WWF. I knew him. And so I was kind of scared, like, I don't know who these guys are. They are crazy. They're bleeding into each other. And in that 2300 arena, there was an upstairs balcony and there was a shower. There was a shower up there. And Jasmine, I'm not going to lie to you. I announced Ruckus. I didn't have anything else to do. And I went up to the kind of loft area and just sat. And Danny Havoc and Necro did a death match. And then they came up to like that balcony area and they were all bloody. And then I just saw them go into like a steamy room. And I lie to you not, there was like a red curtain. Like there was like, I don't know if it was a shower curtain or just like a curtain to cordon off that. I never went in that area, but I saw it. And I just remember seeing these two bloody men go into this room. And there was steam and there was a red curtain. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I've got myself into. I don't know what they're doing back there now. I know what they just did out there, but now there's like steam and like, I really, there was parts of it that were kind of terrifying to me. Having only known MCW, WWF, WCW, and some ECW, some ECW, but this was like, I didn't even realize I was in the ECW arena. The first couple times I was there, I didn't even realize where I was. That's kind of how, ignorant I was to things. But I learned, and I just was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right thing, because who knows what's going to happen at one of these things? What's going on in that room back there? Why is there smoke? And yeah,
I'm concerned about that right there. The whole thing with the steam room. I'm very concerned that he's there with another man, and yeah, I think I'm going to speak when he comes back from Japan. I think I'll have a talk with him about that and ask him, why were you in a steam room with another man?
Well,
The first thing, which is fine, huh?
Well, you know that building better than I. Were there multiple showers in there, or was it just
I've
one?
never been in that shower room. I've never taken a shower there, and I would never go in there because I'm sure the different stalls. I mean, I don't know. I just can't see Necro Butcher in a steam room with another man for some reason.
Well, they walked in there. They walked in there one after the other, and I was a little freaked out at the sight of them going in there. And I was thinking to myself, what are they doing? And I think I asked Claude maybe when we were before I left. I was like, "Yo, what's up? What's up in that room?" He said, "Oh, that's a shower. It was just clean, getting cleaned up,
Oh yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah. Well,
I'm gonna break his balls. I have to now. Now I have to break his balls over this. I won't say it came from. He wouldn't care. It's Necro.
I saw what I saw, and like I said, I have no reason to lie. It was a scary time the first one or two times I was there.
Yeah, well, CCW is a really interesting place. They ran shows there after us. They ran shows when I had 3VW. Then I quit 3VW and I just moved on to other things. But so CCW seemed like a very long gig for you. Then you went somewhere else after. Where did you go after that before ending up at, was it GCW you were just at, yeah?
Yeah, so
That's
I guess.
so crazy.
GCW, well, GCW, my last GCW show was in 2019, but I guess from CZW, I went to ROH. Right. I was at Ring of Honor. And my time in Ring of Honor is all the Sinclair, when Ring of Honor was purchased from Carrie and all of those guys, yeah. Sinclair broadcast group. So I didn't get to be there for the good days, the CM Punk days and the Chris Hero and all that. I always get there late to the party, is the narrative of my career. And not to say that the time that I was there was bad, but obviously Ring of Honor was kind of on the decline, and they were subsequently sold. But yeah, I was there for the entire Sinclair broadcast group purchase acquisition, and I was a backstage correspondent. But also they leveraged my experience with merch. They leveraged my experience with merch all the way back from my early days in MCW, and I was the merchandise coordinator. I took over for Shane Hagedorn and Ross, who got caught doing some stuff, not here for that. But They were showing the door, yeah, and I became the merch guy. So in addition to doing the merch, Delirious Hunter knew that I was a pretty good announcer and really good stick guy. So he would kind of split my time when I was doing merch with also doing like backstage interviews, bumpers for when we were coming to Turner Hall Ballroom and Minnesota and stuff like that. And I did that for about 3 years before they laid me off. They essentially they eliminated my position when I got called into the office. The exact term that they used was, after analyzing the fiscals for the past year, we have come to the decision to eliminate your position. And my only question was, well, why me? And all they did was repeat the exact same thing, the exact verbatim. They just said, we reassessed the fiscals over the past year and we've decided to eliminate your position. So that was it. I was there for 3 years. And then it was weird because after I left, after I was no longer on the payroll, they started like having me still come and do like live events hosting. Like I would still like kind of, as the people were coming into the arenas, I would be like, all right, guys, we got the Young Bucks downstairs signing autographs. Kenny Omega's down by ringside. I would just be like kind of like being a game show host for the live events and, doing trivia with the fans. We blast that on the Facebook or whatnot, or whatever social media, and just kind of doing that. And they had me do that for about a year after I had been let go. And then I would be calling about like Atlanta travel, Pittsburgh travel, and it would just be like, oh yeah, we're gonna get that to you. Like we're getting someone that's gonna be like kind of your assistant. It was just like the whole like, and I got tired of calling, and I was like, I don't think they really have a path for me anymore. Maybe I got that extra year to soften the blow of me being, released or my position being eliminated. Maybe the guy who did that was like, I got a little bit more in the budget. Let's, keep Larry around here and there. But then the calls just stopped. And then within 2 years, Ring of Honor was not even the same thing. So, but yeah, I did Ring of Honor. And while I was doing Ring of Honor, I was helping Danny DeMonto with a project, Jersey Championship Wrestling, which eventually became Game Changer Wrestling, and I was their original MC when they were not anything. I mean, they always were something, but when they were not the massive indie machine that they are today. But I was the original guy helping Danny DeMonto and Brett Lauderdale turn JCW into Game Changer Wrestling. And I was with GCW and also during that time doing a lot of ICW. Before ICW was the Chains, it was an Elks Lodge, Queensborough's Elks Lodge, or right next door to it. I never got in the real Elks Lodge. I got to the one right next door to it. That was where ICW, before it was the Chains, that's where they ran. So I was doing a lot. I was doing as much as I possibly could, from MCW to CZW to ROH to ICW, before the Chains, the GCW, a little NYWC out there on Long Island with Mikey. I did his shows, and I was doing any and everything that I could. But you're right, my main milestones are CZW onto ROH and then GCW. So yeah.
That's interesting with ROH. I was wondering, maybe they spoke to a lawyer, because that's the first thing I would have done, was go to a lawyer. If someone just lets you go like that when you've been there for so long. So they probably spoke to a lawyer. I don't know. That's just me. I deal with lawyers all the time.
I think so I was the merch guy by myself for 6 months. And then a corporate employee from the office came to be my partner. Okay. And it's, in hindsight being 2020, Jeff Jones, the judge, told me, he was like, hey, now that you have that partner, you've really got to be on your A game, because this is a guy that was already being paid by the corporate, the people in corporate, and they have kind of shifted him over to your department. That means that if somebody's head's going to roll, it's probably going to be yours. And I remember Jeff said that. I was like, you're just trying to get me worked up, and he's like, no, I know the way things work. You were here by yourself. You're making this money. You're getting a steady check. Now you have a partner. That partner is really someone you should be on the lookout for. And when they eliminated my position, I said, why me? And the reason I said why me is because they didn't eliminate the other guy's position who came after me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I could have told you they were shady back then, and your
Yeah,
friend was
I
correct.
learned.
He was correct, and it's interesting because then now you're at XPW Wrestling, and you went to CCW, which is kind of like training grounds for the blood and all the gore and everything. What did you even think about Rob? Because I never watched Dark Side of the Ring until the very first New Jersey show, and someone had made me watch it with him. He didn't make me, but he just, hey, let's just watch a ring of let's watch this ring of this Dark Side of the Ring. Did you ever see it before? No, I didn't see it before. Well, you got to watch it, dude, especially the episode with Rob. I'm like, okay, so I'm watching this, and then obviously I'm working for Rob the next day, and it's so weird because I remember Rob from back then versus now, and it's so different. But was it scary at first when you were coming to work for him? Because GCW is they're so woke, and we're so anti-woke, if you know what I mean. And
Absolutely.
I know I'm happier there. We're all happier there. And like, what was your initial reaction to this? And did anyone react negatively at first when you were coming over for us?
Well, my reaction about Rob was that he was like, wrestling kind of in a lot of ways to me has always been very adjacent to like the mob. In sort of kind of like, you've got your capos, that like are bosses, that have a pretty steady bankroll and can make things happen. And the only reputation that I had known about Rob Black before XPW came back was Messiah being attacked and the thumb. And I had only met Messiah one time when he came to a CZW show, and I remember it was shortly after that, and everyone kept like going up to him and asking to see his thumb, gone. And Rob to me is in the vein of Zandig, Paul Heyman, the bosses, not the wrestlers who never made it and kind of like are running their own show, or the referees who kind of like whatever, however their ways of getting to being the promoter, whatever, notwithstanding, there were other guys that were kind of like, I guess I should say, I thought Rob was connected. I just felt like that these guys that were all the way up at the top, Zandig, Paulie, Gabe, to some extent from Ring of Honor, Gabe's kind of a nerd. No, with all due respect, but like the other guys seem like that. These guys were like up to, kind of maybe I don't want to know their past and what they were up to. And I got a lot of backlash, in particular from Reddit. I will say that everyone on
Reddit? Who the hell Reddit? Who goes on Reddit, for crying out loud? And who Reddit?
Well, I blast out announcements on everything. I don't care. Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, Google Plus, whatever it is, I blast out my announcements. And I blasted out the Larry Legend, Here Comes Revenge graphic. I thought it was fantastic. It was one of the best graphics of me, and really kind of one that got a lot of traction. So I sent that out on Reddit, and they were just so mean to me. They were saying, well, we know what you stand for now, to be around a bunch of homophobes and racists. And they basically were saying, like, I'll do anything for money. That essentially they were saying like, oh, so we see what you're about, money, because now you're working for, I can't even, some of it got deleted. Some of it, Reddit itself was like, okay, that's too harsh, but they were just like coming at me like, well, so long, Larry, I'll never listen to another thing you ever say. And I was like, okay, like, there are other promoters that I've worked for that have pretty sordid, past, and there are other wrestlers that I've worked alongside that have not the best reputation. So I don't get where all this hate is coming from, but Reddit is a very particular social media type, and a lot of them love the anonymity of Reddit. You can't see them. It's just little thing with some antennas and a shirt, and you never know who that is. And they
Because
can
they're
just
pussies. They're fucking pussies. They're not going to come out to our faces. They won't say it to us, but they're
yeah,
pussies hiding behind the keyboard. It could be someone that you know. It could be someone that you even work with now, you worked with before. You could be your next door neighbor. It could be your dog sitter. It's
yeah,
anyone on Reddit. And this is the problem. This is the issue. They're too comfortable saying stuff behind a screen. Because if it's in person, you'll get smacked to your face and spat on.
it's funny you say that. It could be someone that you know. When I was just in LA 2 weeks ago with you, we were together at one point. I remember a fan came up to me and he was just like, "Yeah, man, I saw that stuff that people were saying on Reddit. Fuck those guys." And I thought to myself, "Wow, no one else has brought that up to me ever." I'll bet you that was one of those fans. That was one of those people, and they just wanted to be like, "I'm really on your side. Let me pat you on the back right to your face," when they were probably one of the nastiest comments on that post. I'll bet you it
Oh,
was.
hang on. Was he wearing a steampunk hat with glitter? With
I
sequins?
don't think so. I don't think he was
Okay,
wearing
never mind. Because that guy was saying something similar to me, and he was wearing a shirt that Teddy Hart made for him. So I'm like, could it be the same guy? Because it's the same rhetoric he used. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, when he said this to me, he was a normal. There was so much going on. It was kind of like one of those where I'm trying to maneuver through a bunch of people, take pictures and do all that. But really get to my car, get to the back, and he just comes up to me and he's like, "Oh, Larry, I saw that stuff on Reddit, man. Fuck those guys." And I was like, "Oh yeah, well, Reddit, they're the worst of the worst," and just kept it moving. But I'm like, huh. No one else ever said anything to me about that. Everyone's really just been saying they support me or whatever. And this guy's calling attention to kind of some very negative, inflammatory things surrounding my decision. So I got a lot of backlash and sort of what are you doing from the Reddit people? And then of course I got a lot of kind of heat, if you will, from my former ICW No Holds Barred, because of course that graphic came out at the very beginning of one of their shows in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So a lot of them felt it was a malicious, intentional thing that was done. And, you reap what you sow. I wouldn't, I had no plan. I had no plan to join XPW. I did not. But I'm a genuine person, and I made friends with another genuine person, Ron Nemi. And when
I love Ron. Oh, I love him.
One of the most lovable people ever.
Yes.
And when he kind of got wind of the fact that I was not at an ICW show after not being at the UK show, which I was advertised to be at, once he kind of got wind of that, he is the one who he started churning hey, you need to talk to Rob. I'm going to get Rob to talk to you. You're not there, and I know why you're not there. Let's make this a positive, and I think he really was knowing how depressed because Danny said Larry's dealing with some mental problems, some health issues, and he wasn't entirely telling a lie, but a lot of those came from his actions. And I did
It's not his place. It's not his place either. No, I'm sorry. No, it's not his place to do that. It's up to you to do that because it's
exactly
yours. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, but he had to cover his own ass because I had been there from the first No Holds Barred all the way through the UK. And now they were in Chattanooga and there was no me. So, he went out there and postured and, da-da-da-da. But the whole while that he was doing that performative shit, Ron was hitting me up. Schlack was hitting me up. And then after I heard from Ron and Schlack, I heard from Rob Black. And within 24 hours, it all happened. And it was one of the biggest morale boosters for me at the time. Because overall, I think that it was a very intentional thing that was done. I feel like that having been involved in wrestling for 20 years, there have been other times where people have kind of said, "Oh, I'm going to knock this guy down a couple pegs. I'm going to pull the rug out from under him while He's riding high just to make sure he knows his role. And despite the miscommunication of why I did not end up in the UK, there was a way that could have been handled. There was a way that could have been handled, and it wasn't handled respectfully. So it really came down to, do you want to continue being disrespected like I was? This is Ron speaking. Or do you want to go to a place that is going to embrace you for all of the qualities that you bring to the table, and you are fucking awesome, and they are going to embrace you. Schlack knows you, I know you, Masada knows you, Rob is going to get to know you, and they're going to love you, and you're going to be respected. And at 41 years old, I shouldn't settle for anything less.
No, no, you shouldn't. And Danny Demento has to Dementi, whatever his name is. He has to cover his ass. That's a lot of ass to cover. So I mean,
okay, yeah,
it's like too much ass
yeah.
to cover. They don't make outfits that big for like drag queens, for fuck's sakes. I know drag queens. I go to drag shows all the time.
Yeah.
A drag queen actually made my wig that I wear for my one woman show. So I go to her stuff all the time. I mean, I've never seen drag queens with asses as big as his. So go figure that. Even RuPaul, for fuck's sake. Seriously.
Oh yeah. And I'll tell you this much, not to read, but he had the gastric bypass. He had that, and he's ballooned back up. He's ballooned back up now to like just a few shades under where he was. And that's another thing that I haven't revealed this to anyone, but I'm so glad to get away from like the eating on the road of ICW. Because it was always McDonald's, and it was always like I had no say in what we ate. It was always like greasy fast food shit. And I'm like, yo, this is going to kill me. This is going to kill us. I'm not, and I don't miss that one bit, but it's showing. It's showing on him. Okay.
A gastric bypass. The only person I know that's had 2 gastric bypasses is it's my boyfriend's wife. And she's had, that bitch has had she's had 2 gastric bypasses and liposuction twice, and she still needs to go back and get it. So what does that tell you? Did I just say my boyfriend's wife? Yeah, whatever. So what does that tell you about these people? You're gonna have McDonald's, you go watch Super Size Me. Super Size Me it just shows you what's in that. With XPW, we don't really eat the worst, but we don't eat the best, but we take care of ourselves. And Rob, of all people, is open-minded. And just for the record, I know people are listening to this. No, we're not transphobe. We are not white supremacist, even though I got called a white European bitch on someone's comment, and it looked like it could have been someone that works there, which is fine. I don't care. And we got all this stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, this is sports entertainment. We don't discuss politics in the locker room, and we don't talk anything but what's going on in front of us. So anyone that says anything different is wrong.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know Drake's political views, but I don't care about that when I'm doing the wrestling. Like that's the furthest thing from my mind when I'm announcing him versus Arrow Boy. Same with Masada. I know his allegations, but when I'm announcing him, again, when we go all the way back to that sacred squared circle, that zone, but again, I don't care about that right then and there. And this is not to be disrespectful to anyone, but like honestly, Masada and I aren't like texting like in between shows. We see each other, we come together, we do our thing. We'll smoke a cig, drink a couple brews, and then it's like, I'll see you at the next one, brother. So I'm not trying to say I don't care about that shit, but I really don't. Like he's not my. I hate to say he's not my friend, but it is a professional relationship where we are very friendly with one another. But he's not. I'm not choosing like you understand what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to not be as respectful as possible, about things, but people want to be like, oh, there are pictures of Schlack when he was like 14 giving a Nazi salute. Hey, I didn't know Schlack when he was 14. Schlack didn't know me when I was 14, and I don't dwell on 14-year-old Larry as much as I don't dwell on 14-year-old Schlack. So who gives a shit?
That's so stupid. They dig in, no, they dig into everything, and that's the problem. Just even in nowadays, I've lost friends due to politics, but the thing is, what it all boils down to at the end of the day is a few things. Number one, how you treat people at the end of the day is what counts, not who you go to the poll to vote for, what program you watch on the news. And the other thing is, people fail to understand that there are two sides to the story. So with Teddy Hart, I came out on his side because I know him, and I've been around a lot of people that are opportunists that jump on a bandwagon. Oh, you too, me too, you too, me too. There's always someone out there that wants your job. There's always someone that wants your spot and will do anything to come for you, whether it's you or prime example, ROH and other things. So at the end of the day, no one is above having someone come after them with false allegations. Like I speak to Masada quite a bit, and I know what he was going through, and we're in a very fucked up business, and you get that. It's a circus. And then you're in the midst of this craziness.
Yeah, and also a lot of the times whenever there's like, and I'm not trying, I hope I don't come off sounding misogynist or sexist, but a lot of times when there's these things, like the guy automatically gets like, oh, he did it. Like, it's like, there's no trial. There's no, like, I want to hear his side of the story. It's like, oh, he's a scumbag. He did it. And I'm like,
no,
hey, you never, I mean, this woman was married to Lance Cade. I don't know if I just from just knowing Brig and knowing, you know what I mean? I'm like, I know this guy and he's a good guy. I don't know you. And the last person you were involved with.
Yep. No, I know the whole story. And I always
so I'm like,
I take the guy's side 90% of the time because I know how women are. And fuck, if Weinstein was around, I would have blown him. I don't give a fuck. It would have been a chance if I could find his dick, that is. But
I said the same thing. Matt Stryker once asked me.
Matt Stryker?
Matt Stryker once asked me if I would go down on Triple H for a job. And I told him, oh no, I'm going for the top, Vince or someone in the McMahon's family, like proper, the true bloodline, before I go suck Triple H's dick. I told him that straight face. I'm like, I'm going to the top. If I'm degrading myself to get where I need to be, I'm going for the boss, the big boss, not the little guys underneath, And this was like 2011, I think, that he asked me this question. This was 2011 because Stryker was still working for WWE at the time. And I told him at a table full of guys, I was like, oh, nah, not him. No, if it was Vince, we might be talking.
Yeah, these people don't understand. You have to go aim high. Like you go for CEOs, you go for executives that have the money and more to lose. And then, then you have your blackmail. Not that you want to do that, and it's ridiculous. You see, you get it. People don't understand this shit.
Yeah.
I knew what he was about. And I could tell if a guy's a woman beater or not, because I've been around them before. And, with Joey Ryan, I said, I understand sloppy flirting. I do it all the time with guys half my age. I don't give a fuck though. I have yet to be Me Too'd. Then there's like Joey Ryan. I mean, I started flirting with him at first, so he hasn't come out against me, but people do flirt sloppily. And the other thing is, there are a lot of women out there that are married or have relationships. They fuck around on the husband or boyfriend and they're embarrassed. Oh, he raped me. And that is what we're dealing with.
Yes.
So we haven't had that happen in XPW, knock wood, nothing like that will ever happen. But so were you afraid of Rob when you heard you were going to work for him? Like, what did you expect? Did you expect it to be that? You were there for Slava's birthday too.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. What a grand debut. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of Rob. Because Ron Nemi he is my friend. I will say Ron Nemi is probably, although I've known Danny DeMonto longer than Ron Nemi, I would say Ron is probably a closer friend in just a little bit of time that I've known him because of the way that he is. And he just kept telling me, "You're gonna love Rob. You're gonna love him. Just wait till you get there. Wait till you get. Yeah, I know you, and I know how you operate. And I know him, and I know you two are gonna." So I was excited. I was anxious. I wasn't scared. However, once the show started to unfold, I kind of was like, "Whoa!" It kind of was very reminiscent of the CZW feels that I had the first time, where I'm like, "Okay, what have I gotten myself into here?" Like, so I, I could not believe some of the things that I saw, and I think you know what I'm talking about at that first show. And it's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've seen something that I'm like, "Wait, am I seeing this? Is this for real?" So, not scared, just kind of like anxious to see what excited, nervous excitement.
Yeah, I would be too. I mean, I knew when they were in the back going over that spot. And the first thing living in Europe, and being European, I said to Hardbody, I said, "So you cut or uncut?" I got into a fight with a boyfriend once in Germany, and I kicked him in his dick. I had my heels on. Like when I go out, I have the heels. I ripped his foreskin. So that's the first thing I think to myself. This guy has to have foreskin. So
Yeah.
when he answered that, I'm like, okay. But Joe was so like, he looked so scared in the back, and I said, "What's wrong?" "Oh, it's just a spot I'm thinking about. I don't know if I can do it." "Well, what is it?" "What is it?" So
Yeah.
he just, he really, I mean, they were scared. Then we
Yeah.
still got dirty looks at the WrestleCon. Some guy called me whatever. He called me something else, um, for like doing Mega Maga. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck the problem is. I think the optics are great. You have like a white,
Yeah.
I with the Trump flag and the overalls, and I
Who
like it.
cares? Look at the way it looks.
It looks disturbing, is what it looks
Yeah.
like. And just everything with the dick thing that kept coming up. I'm like, why are people giving us dirty looks? And I forgot, oh, the dick incident. Then I forgot about the thumb incident until someone brought it up 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I totally forgot.
that was that was my experience with Rob. And then also, of course, that he went away for a while. I understand Rob has gone
Yeah,
away for a while too. So
yeah.
this is all kind of more of the mystique of that this guy is connected. You know what I'm saying? Like he got someone's thumb cut off. Also, New Jack Vic Grimes.
Oh, the
Like,
taser?
yeah.
Oh,
So I'm like, who runs a company like this? A criminal. Back, because that was like a receipt for Vic Grimes, like almost killing New Jack, and falling
well,
on his.
yeah.
I don't. I've heard a lot of New Jack shoots. I've actually never heard of Vic Grimes shoot, but I've heard a lot of New Jack shoots, and it was like, New Jack was like, I was trying to kill him because he almost killed me.
He almost did. He said, if when New Jack says, "Let's go, we're going, let's go," you go. You don't want to go. It's scary, I knew New Jack very well, and to know him is to love him. He's a very special person in some ways, but you have to see you just have to know him. But the whole thing was just scary. And when we had the scaffold in Jersey, the first thing I'm thinking of is New Jack with that taser. So I just stayed in the back. I kind of like peeped out. I see Atticus and Schlack. I'm like, okay. Yeah. And I know Schlack doesn't have a taser. I highly doubt Atticus does either. But what's your intention now? Besides, you're staying with us, right? Like we basically
kidnapped you. Oh, I had too much fun.
We kidnapped you then.
Yeah, I had too much fun. I had too much fun. I like the scenery. I love Kat. I love Sage. I love Lindsay. I love, you know what I'm saying? I love being around, the ladies. I like what I see. And then it's also very familiar terrain for me because I miss announcing Necro. I miss announcing Drake and Masada. I even got Lucky 13, who's a real journeyman. Lucky gets around everywhere, so it's not like I missed him because he's the one guy that since I've left CZW, I don't care where I go, I'm announcing him year over year, multiple times. So, but still, it's good to be back around the guys who were there when I was first on my first 10 years, my first decade in the game. These are some of the key players who I was roughing it with. I got to see Drake go to WWE. I was there at that Mania where he was the ref for Ronda Rousey and Angle versus Triple H and Stephanie. And I lie to you not, Jasmine, when I saw Drake come out as the referee, you would have thought someone had just said, hey, here's $1 million. I flipped out. People were looking at me like, what's wrong with this guy? And it was because that was my homie. And he was up there. He was up there at Mania and I was there to fucking cheer for him, you know? So I'm so glad to be back. I'm so glad to be back around, my family. It's such the context of the words, they're like a family. We are like a family at large, but it's like you kind of move in all these different circles. Again, it goes right back to what I said about the mafia, like about and these bosses and like these like little families, these little sets. And I feel like a ring announcer, if they're good enough, should be able to like bob and weave. I don't think there should ever be a problem with me showing up on anybody's show. But
you wouldn't. There's a problem.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Unless it's Danny's show or like GCW, of course. And I ran into Brett Lauderdale for the first time. I saw him in person at WrestleCon. The guy's so short. I'm like, then he's standing next to me. I had my heels on, so I'm powering over him. And then I see Masada go up to him. I'm like, oh, you're Brett? Okay, I had no idea. I'm like, you're really short. Because it's the only thing I could think of. I accidentally came out of my mouth. But yeah, I guess, yeah, so that's, you're just stuck with us. And Rob's like the mafia in that respect. I met him in 1998 or 97. I worked for him. Then I'd quit in 99 and went back to Xpw Wrestling. And here I am years later, like last year. It's just, we started talking again, and California was last year. I went to the show, and wrestling is like a drug, everyone. When you step in the ring, it's some kind of a drug, and you just can't, you just stay there. Then I met Necro for the first time, that first show. We weren't working together, but I just knew it was this big guy with big hands and American flag pants on that was talking to me, and I was scared of him.
Yeah, you see? Yeah. Like it's the first time, it's kind of like, whoa, what is going on here? And he stood out the first time that I met him in CZW, and just the images and the style of wrestling, it seems so real, like it seems like, very genuine. So yeah. But I'm so happy to be around him again. He was so happy to see me in the back. We hugged, and he just went over how I was going to announce him again. And he was like, what's that cool thing that you say when you announce me? What do you call me again? And I was like, the godfather of deathmatch wrestling. He's like, yeah, do that. Yeah. Because, I mean, he is.
He really is. It's amazing to have the honor to work with him. And Drake, I met Drake when he was like 17 or 18. I wasn't doing anything inappropriate. I was working for Mid-South Wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was working with the Blue Meanie on the show, and he came up to me and bought a Polaroid. He was underage, and I still took his money, I think.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
As long as they're tall enough to reach over the table, I'll take their money. Because one thing, I'm a whore when it comes to my money. Like, I don't like people fucking with my money. You fuck with my money, then I'm coming after you, and you don't want me coming after you.
Yeah, well, it is. There's people I got to come after from LA. I'll tell you that much,
What happened?
Well, everybody was square biz. Everybody was square biz. But there's one promoter. There's one promoter that I'm still kind of hounding.
Yeah.
And it just is the biz. It's just the biz. Not everybody can be upfront with it. And I should have known there would be a little chicanery, because for that particular show, the promoter wasn't even in town. So when you're doing a show for a promoter and they aren't even there. He wasn't even there. I should have known, like, I'm not getting paid for this.
Well, let me know. I'll send someone to collect the money for you. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, I've had people collect money for me before. I don't give a shit. So, you guys got to check out Larry, because if you haven't seen an XPW show live yet, you have to do it. And we're going to be expanding. If you're going to watch us on Stream XPW, fine, be my guest. But Larry, the legend, like, he deserves his own t-shirt at this point, because he's a legend. You're working with legendary people like Necro and Rob, so that's amazing.
Hell yeah.
You fill the void, right?
Yeah. And Ron knew that.
That's good. You got the void filled. And what other creative endeavors are you doing now? Are you still doing any theater or?
Well, I feel like now I'm 41 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I should settle. I should settle. There are a lot of people that want me to creatively do things with them, but I'm only one legend. I don't have a clone. So as much as I'd like to be all over the place, I like the way that it feels right now, just being solidified with XPW, being the XPW guy, being synonymous with XPW, just like I was with CZW, and just like I was with ICW. And little by little, before you know it, I'll be 40 years in here, and I'll be able to say I'll be doing an interview with somebody, and I'll be like, and then there was this, and then there was that, and then there was this, and then there was that. But the key is that you just keep on going, keep on going. And right now, I'm very happy. I'm very happy talking to Rob about California 2, which I am going to be the host of, and it's going to last. I can't wait.
I'm excited. I'm excited that you're on board with us. And can you throw out your socials really quick? And I will obviously type them up on here too.
Sure, sure. So on Instagram, the easiest one is Real Larry Legend. Real Larry Legend on Instagram. On Twitter, it's a little kind of quirky. It's BLKLKP. Okay, so that's BLK, like blackout, the first part of blackout, and then LKP, because before I was Larry Legend, I was Larry Kennedy Phillips. The first announcing name that I went by in MCW that they gave to me was Larry Kennedy Phillips. So my Twitter is kind of like a combination of the two things that kind of made me. Blackout, Ruckus, bringing me to CZW, and Larry Kennedy Phillips, what I started as in MCW. So BLK, LKP is my Twitter. On YouTube, I have a channel, Larry Legend, and Facebook, Larry Legend. So I was able to get my name on Facebook, Larry Legend, after fighting and showing them a lot of documentation that I was, in fact, a legend. I had to show them, a check made out to Larry Legend, a utility bill made out to Larry Legend, a flight for Larry Legend. I had to show them 5 points of identification that said that I was legendary. And I secured the Facebook page, Larry Legend. So find me there. And Twitter, Instagram, I'm very active. I'd love to interact with you.
That's excellent. So you guys heard it here. So join him on Twitter, join him on Instagram. And until next week, we're signing off.
Thanks for having me, Jasmine.
I hope you're enjoying the ride on Crazy Train with Jasmine St. Clair podcast. So if you are, do me a huge, huge favor. Please go ahead. Go on to Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever, but Apple's great. Give me a nice rating and review. Send me a screenshot, and I promise you, I will send you a special goodie bag. So please rate and review Crazy Train with Jasmine St. Clair podcast. And in exchange for that, once I see the DM with the review and your name and address, I will get those gift bags out to you. I'm not going to tell you what's in it.